Hi, everybody. We're glad you're here. Thank you. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your attention. And make sure you hit those like and subscribe buttons. Amex is really happy when I send them a check every month. So hit those like and subscribe buttons. Now, as you can tell by the smiling face, we've got our super guest today, Dustin Svendsen. Now, Dustin is a master of many things. He's going to tell us about that in a few minutes. And he's also going to beat me up over a comment I made not too long ago relative to paired sales analysis. But before those fisticuffs begin, Dustin, take a couple of minutes. Tell us what's going on, what floats your boat. Tell us about your new baby. Bring us up to speed on what's going on in your life.
Well, thank you for having me on first, of course, and kind words. I'm gonna do my best to make this interesting for everybody out there. And yeah, hit those like buttons. He needs some cash. Come on, he's retired. Help him out. Um, I'm Dustin Svendsen. I was a regional director for a larger appraisal firm for a while. I have now since gone independent as a boots on the ground appraiser here in the state of Wisconsin. I am on the board of the Wisconsin State Appraisal Institute as just a member there. And the most important thing of all is that I am a father of many. I have a 18-year-old son named Austin, and then I have four younger children, Evelyn, Monroe, Goldie, and Grant. Evelyn is 7, and Grant is about 11 months old. So we are a busy, growing family, and we try to do the appraisals in between all the important parenting stuff.
And given all those kids, yes. And it's great that you realize that they are what is important, not the work that's important. The work pays the bills, but the family is what's important. All right,
Most important thing I can think of.
let's get into this. Now, I wrote an article recently, and I made the comment in it that I didn't think that paired sales analysis was a particularly good analytical tool. And there are many reasons for it, but the big reason is basically, well, there's an old joke. Two old appraisers were having lunch, and one said, "You heard of paired sales?" The other said, "Yeah, what about it?" And the person said, "I found one." And the point is, given the fact that if nothing else, every piece of real estate has a different location on the surface of the planet, it's almost impossible to find two sales that are immensely alike, except for one difference. And then we just assume that that one difference is the market's quantification of its contributory value. And my comment, my thesis was, yeah, that's there. But how do you know there isn't noise in that one variable? How are you certain that this buyer and this seller reflected that difference solely in that price? And then having one sale with the pool and one sale without a pool doesn't indicate what the pool's worth. It indicates what the pool's worth to that buyer and that seller. And then Dustin, in his very gentlemanly and pleasant way, basically told me I was a blooming idiot. So, Dustin, go ahead. Take me to task. That's perfectly fine. I'm married. I'm used to it. So, uh, uh, tell me why I'm absolutely wrong, and we should give greater weight to paired sales analysis when we're involved in adjustments in an appraisal.
Well, first, it's not that I disagree with anything you said there. It's all absolutely spot on, right? You're very rarely you're going to find tract housing where everything's the exact same except for maybe a pool or a patio, the only difference. And then again, you're right. There's always going to be noise in that. Did they like the colors of that house better? Did they like the location a little bit? One block off of this street, one block off of that street, closer to a school, closer to a family member. There's always noise in data. Always going to be appraisal is not 2 plus 2. Appraisal is looking for patterns in data and then trying to interpret that and apply it in a logical way. So where do pairing come in and bracketing? My point that I was making when you made your statement was that you have to have both things. You have to have a tool of some sort that's drawing out data and showing you possible adjustments. I always think of like if you're going to run algos, or regression, it's going to give you an adjustment opportunity. There is no factual answer to the adjustment. And then you got to take it back to your sales grid. Your sales grid is your testing area for that adjustment, right? So let's say you run a regression or something on a pool. It's going to give you a range from maybe zero. Maybe they're saying there's no reaction for that pool, all the way up sometimes to 100, 150,000. You don't know. And a bunch of different little values in between. Um, None of those have any real meaning until you apply them to the assignment you're on. So backtrack it one step. For a very long time in the appraisal industry, appraisers were using static adjustments. Okay, they were grabbing a number off of a PDF that was given to them by a supervisor at some point in time. We still have this problem we hear from the GSCs where $20 a square foot is being used at every report the appraiser delivers. Adjustments are not static. It's a very dynamic activity you're undertaking when you go to adjustments. And that's why bracketing and pairing is so important in the sales grid. Because if you don't bracket the feature, you cannot see how the adjustment that you derived from a tool or any other way you derived it, whichever method you decide to grab, impacts that assignment at that market segment at that point in time. I always like to say adjustments have an expiration date on them. As soon as you sign that appraisal report you're working on, those adjustment patterns that you just use, they expire because they're only good for that particular assignment. Because as we know, the markets are always changing. What people are looking for is always changing in housing. You either go from periods of time where there's larger families and bedrooms are more important to where you have smaller families and bedrooms become less important. These things keep evolving. Market segment matters, right? If you're going to be in a very high-end market and you don't build a high-end quality home, that's going to be a major impact to you, right? Pools typically only matter at higher end segments, right? And the adjustment for a pool is going to change again from different market segments. If you're in a very high-end neighborhood with a very high-end pool, that adjustment for that pool should be more aggressive than is an adjustment for an in-ground pool in a market that has no in-ground pools, and this house just happens to have one. Maybe there you have to look at you have a super adequacy there or some sort of over improvement where the pool does not have a market reaction. So back to your original point, why I believe pairing and bracketing is so important is because it's the only way to really test. And I was in a meeting one time and a guy said, a test of sanity, and that's always stuck with me. Like, what is the test of sanity for that adjustment you apply? Like, where are you getting this from? And so I always say we're using tools, we're using industry accepted methodology to give myself a variety of opportunities for adjustments, right? You're never going to land us in. You're going to draw a bunch of data. I'm going to draw a bunch of data. I'm going to apply methods. You're going to apply methods. None of us are going to land at the same number, rarely, right? When we apply those adjustments in our sales grid, though, how that impacts that bottom line of that sales grid, that's where you're testing the reality or the importance of that adjustment. Your take, my
Okay.
friend.
Okay. Now, you mentioned a couple of variables. For example, you said houses are different colors. They're in different school districts. Okay. Now, and you mentioned the pool, which I think is an excellent example. Okay, Mr. and Mrs. Jones pay $200,000 for a house with a pool in school district X. And Mr. and Mrs. Smith pay 180 for a house in the same school district that doesn't have a no pool. So the pool looks like it's worth $20,000. But what was the influence of the school district in that price difference, if any? And how is it going to be possible? Here, this is my first question. And how is it going to be possible for the appraiser to say, oh, same size house, same school district, pool, no pool, $20,000 difference. Therefore, I'm ascribing the $20,000 to the pool, when in reality, as you indicated, maybe there was no value to the pool, but it was worth $20,000 to the buyer to get in that school district. Now, I concede your point that there is a difference. I concede your point that there is a physical difference, the pool. I concede your point that there is a price difference, and we're just calling it $20,000. I concede your point that there are other variables to take into account. But given that there are other variables to take into account, by simply comparing house with a pool and house without a pool, how is it that we can ascribe that entire $20,000 to the pool when in reality nothing may have gone to the pool? It was the difference in school districts.
100% right. And it is a complicated web, often for the appraiser to untangle. 100%. Nobody's ever gonna argue with you on your points. You make great points. But we have a job to do. We have to do it with credible, and we have to find a methodology that works. So what you're describing is you're just adding in a second attribute, whether that's the school district, whether maybe that's an additional bedroom or additional bathroom. What we have to find a way is to hold those other attributes constant while we then look for the adjustment rate for the other feature. So what you're typically going to do is in your description, you're going to take a look at what is the market impact for the different school districts. Is that correct? You said different school districts. Did I hear you correctly? In your example, was it two different school districts? Oh, yeah, I'm mute. Sorry, Tim.
Got to get off mute here. Okay.
Yeah.
Same school district. And what I was trying to say was because everything is the same but the pool, how is it that we can ascribe the 20K solely to the pool when maybe Mr. and Mrs. Jones bought there because it is in that school district? In other words, the difference was the school district, not the pool. But yet, because it looks like the only difference is the pool, that's where we're going to put the adjustment.
Oh, I see your point. I see your point. And you're right. There's always going to be what people call the human factor that we can't measure, right? That's kind of what you're breaking into here and your thought where there's the human decision making that there's no way to measure that or understand that. Again, what we're looking to do in appraisal is find things that we can measure that credibly and reasonably, and that we can support through different methodology. Now, again, you're describing one house versus one house. I always like to say market value is not determined by one market sale. We need multiple sales to market value. Adjustments are not typically derived from one market reaction. So again, you're pairing, I understand what you're saying because it's not a one-to-one pair. What I'm saying is you're going to use a tool most likely. Okay, well, you should be using a tool. If you're not, you should get on a tool. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure 3.6 is going to make you start to use some analytical tools. So if you're not, you may want to cross that bridge here before you get to having to do it by the GSEs, because that's going to take multiple data points, right? And it's going to give you multiple outputs. So now I'm not looking at just one sale. So it's not a paired sale direct there. It's more like a group pairing. And then when I apply it in the grid, though, I am looking at more from a paired angle. But again, I'm not just using that one sale because one market reaction should not be the only thing you're using for your adjustment rate. Is that a good explanation, Tim? You hear it? Did I lay that out okay?
Okay. Now, same house, same school district, blah, 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 blah. What you're saying, tell me if I've got this wrong. Again, I'm married, so I'm used to being told that. You say, okay, one sale with a whatever, and one sale generally similar without a whatever
Yeah, yeah.
may be able to isolate the contributory value of the whatever. But rather than depending on one versus one, you're saying, let's get 10 with the whatever and 10 without the whatever and compare them to see if the whatever indeed affects value. Now, my question is the same thing. We've got 10 with variable X, we've got 10 without variable X, but we're assuming that the difference is due solely to variable X. How can we be sure that the variable, excuse me, how can we be sure that the difference is solely and uniquely creditable to variable X when it could be the school system, it could be financial constraints, it could be the current owner converted the garage into a workshop and the buyer guy really likes the workshop,
Yeah, for sure.
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, you've got 10 with X and 10 without X. Therefore, it looks like the median or the average value of X is whatever it is. But then that is based on the same assumption that there is nothing else in X. So my question is, and you mentioned the word noise, so we're going to keep using the word noise
100%.
in paired sales analysis, in and of using nothing else, just paired sales. How do you remove the noise so that when you say, okay, the pool, we'll stay with that. The pool is worth $20,000, but one guy over here liked the workshop. He didn't care about the pool. He wanted the workshop. So the difference that he paid, the $20,000 or 15 or 32 or whatever it is he paid, wasn't for the pool. It was for the workshop. So how do you get, and this is the root of my comment. How do you reliably extract that noise? So you're looking solely at the contributory value of the pool, even if you've got 10 sales with and 10 sales without.
So I would say the more times that you can have that reaction pulled out of the marketplace, the more likelihood that it is on the pool. But again, like I said in the beginning, I'm going to concede your point that there's always going to be some amount of noise and you can never remove it fully. You're in the gray area that I believe if you follow Keith Wolf at all and his stuff out there, he's talking about this a lot, where it's like there's always going to be some noise in the data sets, and he gets pretty advanced on that stuff. But you're right, you're absolutely right. There's always going to be some noise that you just can't absolutely extract. But again, we have to find methodology that's reasonable and credible. And if we can extract that pool adjustment on 10 or 20 different ways, and we're all landing around the same point, I think you can take a bit of a leap of faith that the contributor value of the pool, based on a market reaction that you've done several times, is most likely X that you're coming up with. Now let me ask you a question. You've been doing this for a long time, as I've been doing this for a long time, and you understand noise as well as I understand noise. As you've been doing this longer than I've been doing this. Although retired, maybe I'm catching you. Um, how would you, let's spin it around, how would you go about it if you don't like paired sales, my friend? How do you go about removing the noise in your scenario? Because again, I don't think any appraiser will ever say that you can fully remove the noise from data in housing. In housing,
So how do you kick the noise out? Okay. You don't.
you know, yeah, I
You
agree.
don't. You can't kick the noise out because, excuse me, you don't know what is noise and you don't know what is the market speaking to you in a language that you just don't yet understand. And markets, not only do markets not speak clearly, they have a bad habit of mumbling. And I've found that they have a bad habit of mumbling in a dead language that nobody on the planet can understand. So, what you do, for example, you got 10 sales with and you got 10 sales without. Okay. And you say, okay, that pool adjustment is $20,000. And I look at it and go, okay, I can see the 20K, but there's noise in there, and we both know that. So, do I say it's negative noise or it's positive noise? In other words, if it's negative noise, do I come off the 20, make a 17.5 adjustment? Or is it positive noise saying, some of those cells were old and people are building more pools now than they were. So maybe ought to adjust at 22.5. So the point is, you're not going to get rid of noise. It's how you interpret it. Now, your last name is very Scandinavian, as is mine. And do you happen to speak Swedish or Danish or Finnish or anything like that?
I do not. I do not. I know Kringle well, but that's about it.
Okay, all right. Um, okay, when you speak a foreign language, you come to understand interpretation. And much of what we do is interpretation. Okay. Now, I'm not going to get into examples here, but we we have to look at the market and say, and Dustin, you say 20K. And I say, it was 17.5. Okay. Now, the thing is, neither one of us is wrong, assuming we've got the support for it.
Sure.
And assuming we explain clearly, well, and persuasively how we went from here to here, and then from here to here.
Yeah. Agreed.
So
Agreed.
your question is well put about, well, how do you get rid of the noise? The answer is you don't.
You don't. I agree. I
You
mean, I
you
think
account for the noise,
I was gonna say, I
but
think you
you
could, I
cannot
think,
eliminate it. No.
yeah, I think you can minimize the noise, and 100% agree. You never, because it's that human factor that we just nobody can measure. Why does somebody want what they want? Nobody really knows. Um, but on a larger scale, though, I think when the GSEs have been signaling, anyways, that a lot of appraisers are, and Jason Toluma, when I take his class, always says they're just like grabbing it out of the air, and he does a little hand sign like they're grabbing it out of the air, and there's no backing to it. So I think we got to be careful. Just that you got to start supporting this stuff some way. And I know this has been the hot topic on the old LinkedIn. I've seen some people getting pretty hot about having to explain where they're getting their adjustments from and things of that nature. But you're supposed to be doing that anyways. All that data was supposed to be in your work file. That's not a change. We're always supposed to be supporting that adjustment. I mean, we're now they want it in the body of the report a little bit more than they did before, but it was always supposed to be somewhere. I remember listening to well, I think it was maybe somebody at a GSC. We were at a conference, and he had mentioned that he was on an appraisal board, and a younger appraiser posted that, hey, he got a revision request saying, hey, where'd you get this $20 square footage adjustment? Please, give me your support for that adjustment. And the younger appraiser was just kind of like, he asked the question to the board, like, where do I get that from? And I'm like, okay, well, that's a big problem that you don't know where you got it from. And the bigger problem was the amount of responses that came afterwards were like, just state this, or just state that, or just state this. And I'm thinking to myself, it should have been a very simple, let me open my work file, let me grab it to you, and I'll put it in the body report and I'll send it out the door. Because if you ever go to, I mean, I've been lucky enough that I dodged these bullets, but if you ever get stuck in a situation where you have to defend that thing, you better have it in there somewhere. The philosophy that, like, well, I haven't supported, yeah, okay, maybe you could go back and support it, but it should already be there, and it shouldn't be a big deal. And I'll conclude with this because it's something I think about often. Let's say you have $100,000 loan you're doing, and you're the appraiser, and you don't tighten the screws on your adjustments. I like to say you don't do the dials, and you just kind of grab adjustments and throw them in there, and you come in at $97,000. Okay. And the next guy looks at your report and it's really clear that, like, all right, like, well, give me the support, the adjustments. You don't have it. And they do. Okay. And they do. And the screws are pretty obvious, right? Pretty easy one. You can kind of see the patterns are pretty clear. Nothing too complex. Okay. And they dialed the screws in a little bit tighter. And they're like, okay, 94,000. And most appraisers are going to say, we're $3,000 different. Big whip. Okay. But now put yourself in the GSE shoes who are determining risk on these things, and they got a 95% loan to value on this thing. The whole thing's been changed because you missed by only 2 grand or 3 grand, but you didn't do your job. If you're a mortgage appraiser, your number one client is mortgage and the GSEs, and they're the biggest user of our services. Don't get up on your high horse about private work this, private work that. If that's what you are, if you're private, that's the niche you picked, great. But if you've picked doing mortgage work appraisal, you have to understand that your biggest user is going to be the GSEs. And they have a right to get out kind of what they're looking for in your appraisal report. They do. They're not asking you to violate anything or not go against your professional standards. They're just asking for very simple things. Hey, you're supposed to prove adjustments. Show me your proof. It's not a big ask. It's really not a big ask. Sorry, Tim, I went a bit of my own high horse there, but I'm a little frustrated with our industry as a whole. I know a lot of appraisers are great, but we definitely have a spur of us, like any industry, I suppose, that are just not putting in the time and effort that should be put into, and the care and the craftsmanship that we should care about.
All right, thank you. Carry on, if you would, please, with that. Craftsmanship and care.
I think about this often. I have a trainee now. He's licensed and he's young, and can measure house like nobody's business. He can dial that in a second, but he can't understand adjustments because it takes a while to develop that skill set, right? Because we don't do 2 plus 2 is 4. We're looking for patterns in data, as you and I talked about. And then there's all this complication of noise and this, that, and everything, and tools, and what method should I use here? What method shouldn't I use here? I'm applying the adjustment. It's not making sense in the sales grid. What's my plan B to find a good adjustment here to make it make a little more sense? And none of this is making sense to me. It's not clicking for him. So I always try to tell him, I'm like, listen, what you have to start to look at this job and try to pair yourself up to like somebody who's a great woodworker, right? Let's say you build beautiful things out of wood, okay? Do you ever see a guy who cares about his woodwork send out a product with like a blemish in the wood? Or would he stop, fix the blemish before he delivered his product? We got to look at it the same way. Don't send out a report that you don't feel like you've crafted in a way that you feel really proud of. When I sign a report before it goes out, I literally feel a little bit of pride about what I created. Now, maybe you're going to disagree with my adjustments, maybe you're going to disagree with my approaches, but I can promise you this: you're going to read the report, it's going to be supported, it's going to be credible, and it's going to have logic behind it. And if you can't get on board with it, that's fine. And I probably won't disagree with what you come up with if you've done the same thing. But if you've just sent me a three comps and a cloud of dust my way, and you didn't put any time or effort into the report, and you slapped a weighted average chart into the thing that has also no consideration or thought to it, then don't look at me when I then took time to support using tools to build credible adjustments, to then create a reconciliation that makes sense to the end user. Again, the GSE, the end user, who's asking me to do certain things within my product, which are in no way a large ask. They are not a large ask. If you're getting upset that you have to prove adjustments in your report, it's because you haven't been doing it and now you have to, and you're mad you have to take extra time on your report. Also, on my high horse, stop looking at our job as an hourly job. You don't pay it hourly. If it takes you 4 hours to complete it, it takes you 1 hour, it takes you 8 hours. It takes what it takes for you to get the credible, and you're paid very well to do what you do. So do a good job at it. And if you don't want to do a good job at it, go take another job. Get out of our industry, because we have to start to consider it's not appraiser A versus appraiser B. It's appraisers as a whole versus alternate valuation products as the GSE looks at it. If you are not bringing field data back that's superior to the Uber driver that's out there grabbing field data, then why the hell are they going to pay you to get the field data? Why wouldn't they use the Uber driver? If you're not going to come with an analysis that has more logic and facts, not facts, sorry, more logic and support behind it than an AVM, then why the hell wouldn't they go get an AVM? Stop complaining that they're taking your work when you're not doing the work. It's ridiculous to me to hear people talk and complain about an industry that's beautiful. We have a career that's paid more than almost all other careers. And we have freedom of schedule. I mean, it has got to be the greatest career on the planet. It can get burned out. You can get burned out. There's no doubt about that. But do the damn work. Care about the craft you're putting together and do the work.
Dustin, why don't you tell us how you really feel?
I'm getting passionate about it. I really am, because the more you sit on LinkedIn and the more you read LinkedIn stuff, the more you just get agitated. You really will. There's just a lot of the negative noise is in that location. I don't think that's a good overall example of who we are as appraisers, as an industry as a whole. But definitely the majority of the noise on LinkedIn will be negative talk. I mean, we're getting 3.6 and nobody wants to go through change. You think I want to go through change? I don't want to go through change. I'd rather do it the way we're doing it right now. But it ain't going to be the worst thing in the world. And are they going to data scrape to make their model better? Of course they're going to. Put yourself in the GSE shoes. Their job is risk mitigation. They're looking at everything from a risk perspective. Of course, they're going to try to get as tight of a model as they can to protect themselves from risk. But you're feeding the machine. The whole thing is, they could have said when they came out with 3.6, they could have said, you know what? We're not going to use appraisers to feed our model anymore. We're going to use realtors to feed our model. But they didn't. They said we're going to use appraisers to feed our model. They could have went a whole different direction. They didn't. They chose us like they always choose us. They chose us during COVID to keep working. They didn't switch over and say, oh, COVID's a thing. We can't have appraisers out there. I guess we're going to use AVMs because it's not safe for them. And mind you, I applaud our industry. We've been through a lot. As appraisers, we've gone out on the road. We've answered the call multiple times. When COVID was a thing, we were out there on boots on the ground working. When huge volumes were coming through the door from low interest rates, we answered the call and got the work done for them. And so once again, they've come to us again, and they're asking us to feed the machine. Will most likely they start using more waivers? Yes. Yes, they most likely will. Technology is going to catch us, right? Blockbuster didn't go out of business because it had great employees and great staff, or terrible staff and terrible employees. It went out of business because technology caught up to it and it shifted to something different. You're still watching movies on TV, you're just getting it in a different way. Appraisers are still going to be impactful in that environment, but you got to know what you're doing. They are going to run out bad appraisers. They are going to run out appraisers who are not supporting adjustments, and they rightfully should.
Keep talking. You're doing just fine.
Well, I want to make sure you're agreeing with me or disagreeing with me. I don't know because I'm hot taking over here and I'm making all
Oh
kinds of
no,
negative
you're
notes.
on a roll. You're on a roll. Keep going.
I just really wish that we could get over this idea that the GSEs are somehow the empire, the negative empire. They're great people. I mean, have you ever sat and talked to Scott Reuter or Lyle Ratke or Danny Wiley? We've had these guys on. I've talked to them, and they're all appraisers, and they're great people. They're just doing their job, and their job is to protect what they're doing. And I applaud what they do. I really do. I mean, do I want to switch to 3.6? I don't. But they have the big picture. I don't. They know what they need. I don't. They give me what they say they need for me, which is, hey, we really need you to start supporting adjustments because we're not getting that from you guys right now. So take a harder look at your adjustments and see if you can find a better way to do it. And so, yeah, we do. And then third parties come up with tools. And why wouldn't you try a tool? Okay. And then one more high horse. And this will be my last high horse of the day. I'm really getting tired of like when a new tool comes out and an appraiser wants to use it. And then you get the bashing of the appraisers coming out saying, well, if you don't know exactly how that's all being done inside the black box, you can't use it. Yes, you can. You can use it. You have to understand it well enough to apply it into what you're using it for. But the use path does not say I have to be able to break down and do the math myself by hand. It just has to tell me I understand how the tool is operating and then how I'm applying that tool. So I took some data science classes just enough so I understood it. I sat through the presentations enough so I understood it. And then you can use it. But this idea that like, hey, there's a new tool and nobody can use it. Like, no, they should be trying it. But again, use it with caution and do your due diligence to understand what you're doing. But nobody says you have to be able to break down the math by hand if you use the tool.
All right. Sounds good. And I appreciate it very much. Now, Dustin, if somebody needs to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
I am easy. Well, I'm kind of hiding it. I kind of hide myself out to be honest with you because but my email address is DAS, my initials, appraisalfirm@gmail.com. That's a pretty simple way to get a hold of me. Um, I am the kind of opposite of most appraisers, where most appraisers are like, I want to move toward private work. I want to move toward private work. I don't want to move toward private work. I don't want anything to do with private work. I'm a mortgage origination appraiser. That's the role that I've accepted a long time ago. I'm proud to be a mortgage origination appraiser. I don't think I'm the low rung on the ladder of appraisers. I don't think I'm lower than other appraisers. I'm bringing a different skill set than other appraisers are bringing. I do mortgage origination appraisers, and I'm damn proud of it, and I do a damn good job of it every day.
And explain to us your designation, LEED green.
Again, that's just trying to gain additional knowledge, right? We're going to start to see 3.6 is going to start pushing a little bit more toward like, how are you valuing solar panels? So again, the GSEs have signaled, we need you to be able to be better at what you're doing in this area. So I just took courses to get the lead green associate. I'm into that stuff too. High performance whole housing stuff, solar panels, water heaters. I mean, it's just kind of cool, interesting stuff to me, right? The building components, where we're going with building components is very interesting to me.
Okay, so DAS appraisal service or services?
Firm. At one point in time, I thought I
DAS
was
DAS appraisal firm
at
at
gmail.com.
gmail.com. All
At
right,
one point in time, I thought I'd build something bigger, but I think I'm just going to stay me and do me.
there you go. There you go. Um, Dustin, let me thank you. Let me extend my best to you and your family. Let me thank you for your passion. Thank you for getting on your high horse, and numerous times, by the way,
Oh, yeah. It's a big horse.
and telling us not only how you feel, but why you feel that way. I appreciate it very much.
Well, I appreciate you as always, my friend. Thanks for having me on. I'm sorry we couldn't solve the issue of noise and data together, but next time we'll figure out how to get it out of there.
We'll figure something out. Dustin, thank you. My best.
Thank you, my
And
best.
don't go away yet. But everybody, thanks. We appreciate it. We're glad you're here. Dustin, DAS Appraisal Firm. at gmail.com. You can get in touch with me at Tim at the appraisersadvocate.com. Hit those like and subscribe buttons. We like making those monthly payments. Thanks, everybody. Bye bye.